and welcome to episode 232 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is March 5th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So some episodes back, we started to talk about SAP and the integration in Fabric using open mirroring. One of the key highlights there was the platform aspect. Fabric allows partners to plug into the open mirroring concept and bring their solutions to life. In following episodes, we had already partners like DAB and Simplement joining us, talking about their solutions. Today, we want to continue to look at a partner who extends the integration of SAP solutions into Fabric. Interdobs and powerdobs are interesting partners in this regard because they designed a Datasphere-based open mirroring service offering. To tell us more about their solution, I'm happy to have Ronald, Ernst, Tim, and Martijn from Interdobs and powerdobs with us today. Welcome to our show. So before we go into the solution, can you maybe quickly introduce yourself? Like what are you doing in your companies? Maybe Ronald, if you can start.
Yeah, my name is Ronald. I've been working with SAP technology for many years. Responsible for innovations within Interdobs, which is the SAP side of the company, and basically run a lot of Datasphere products. Tim, maybe?
My name is Tim Koster. I've been in SAP 10 years. Did the first Datasphere implementation in 2019 with Ronald. I think it was the first one of Europe. And since then we have done a lot of Datasphere projects together.
Fantastic.
Yes, my name is Martijn Plugge. It's getting a little bit less every time someone else speaks because I've been working with SAP for 8 years, I think. I've been working with for Interdobs for 4 years, and I've been working with Datasphere, I think, for 2 or 3 years, and so mainly working as a SAP BI developer.
Oh, fantastic.
My name is Ernst Wolf. I'm from powerdobs. I'm data engineer, data architect, using Microsoft technique for business intelligence for over 20 years. And we're focusing now on Azure, Fabric, and Power BI. And in case the customer is using SAP, we work close together with the Interdobs colleagues.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your introduction. So before we go into or take a closer look at your service offering, maybe Ulrich, you have been on the show several times. You're obviously from Microsoft. You are our expert when it comes to Fabric and the SAP integration. Maybe you can recap a little what we have done in the past and what is it actually that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Holger, again. Let me share my screen and give a quick introduction into the topic of mirroring and open mirroring. I think sometime back, if I remember it correctly, it was episode 224. We actually did an introduction, a full episode on mirroring and open mirroring. So anyone who wants to get more context and a little bit of more in-depth information on that, maybe have a look at that episode. We also run a demo there showing mirroring for Snowflake. So super interesting episode. I can only advertise it. And I don't want to go into too much detail today. I just want to set the scene a little bit for those who want to get a rough understanding of things. So what is database mirroring? Database mirroring is actually how we envision replication of data sources into Fabric in the current context, right? So the way this works is actually a two-step process. When you look at the diagram here on the left-hand side, we distinguish between the kind of database mirroring or I would call it built-in mirroring, which is an end-to-end experience inside Fabric from a user experience perspective, but also from a connectivity perspective. So it's fully integrated into mirroring. That's the one side of things. And then there's what we talk about in this episode, which is open mirroring, which is slightly different, and I'll come to that later. Let's start with the built-in database mirroring first. The concepts are very similar, and I just want to exemplify how that works. So basically, the idea is that we split the replication process into two phases. The first phase is that for the built-in mirroring, we have connectors. We have a so-called landing zone where we land the data. It can be an initial snapshot. It can be changed data later on. And we have built connectors, which basically fetch the change data feed from a source. So when we call the connector for the first time, we'll get an initial snapshot, land it in the landing zone in a format which we have aligned on, and it also specified and made public, and that's important for open mirroring later on. So this is how that works. We basically have these connectors, and we have a built-in user experience, which basically allows you to set that up. We will reach out to get the data, land it in the landing zone, and then the second step of the process kicks in, which is the mirroring engine, which actually takes the data from the landing zone and processes it into the sync tables. So with the initial snapshot, it will just take that data and insert it into the sync table. With incremental loads or delta loads, it will actually have to look into the files in much more detail, check whether a record is an insert, an update, or a delete, and process it accordingly into the sync. So an insert will be turned into an insert here, an update will be turned into an update, and a delete will be turned into a delete, right? And the beauty of this two-step process is that, of course, as soon as you standardize on the format here in this landing zone, it becomes a very flexible and open thing, because the way we do it here by creating our own connectors and fetching the data is then just one way to do it, right? And the open mirroring concept, which is basically the next evolution of the whole thing, and I'll switch to that slide here, basically shows how we kind of opened up the mirroring concept to third parties. So basically, by specifying or opening the specification, publishing the specification of the format we expect in the landing zone, we can allow any kind of third-party tool to be part of that solution, right? So instead of doing the fetching of the data ourselves, we can basically allow third-party tools to use our APIs to land the data in the landing zone in the format which we expect, and then the horizontal part here from the landing zone into the sync tables works exactly the same way as before, right? So basically, this separation into two phases really makes this whole architecture so flexible, and then allows us to open things up. Another story around SAP, and I think if you go back to episode 224, you will see that we have a lot of partners working on this open mirroring concept. For SAP specifically, we also have non-SAP partners. For example, I think the first partner to implement open mirroring was Oracle with Oracle Golden Gate. So Oracle Golden Gate also integrates with Fabric via open mirroring. But we also have a long list of ISVs, of specialized software vendors in the SAP space with dedicated SAP data integration capabilities, who basically enhance their solutions to support open mirroring. And here's the current state of that. So as of March, as of today, basically, we have 3 ISVs who already have their solutions in the market and are onboarding first customers. That's DAB, Simplement, and SMP. You can also go back to, I think it was episode 225, where we had a session with DAB and Simplement. Sessions with others will, of course, follow. And you also see that we have a roadmap with these partners, right? So 3 more partners are in line to basically make their solutions ready for open mirroring by end of Q1, let's say maybe early Q2. So think about end of March, early April timeframe, when the rest of these partners will also be capable of supporting open mirroring for SAP sources. Now today, we have a very special solution, and it's different from the other solutions which we see here, in the sense that it's not an ISV offering, so it's not a dedicated product which a partner sells, but it's actually part of a service offering. And that's exactly where Interdobs and powerdobs come in. It's basically, and I think they introduced themselves quickly, so it's a mix of SAP expertise on their side with Microsoft expertise on their side, and basically combining these two sides, they came up with their own service offering which integrates into open mirroring. It's a completely different approach in a certain sense, because all the other partners are typically working with ABAP add-ons, which you install on the SAP side. This solution, as we will see in a few minutes, is completely different from a setup perspective. As I said, it's not a dedicated product, but part of a service offering. But nevertheless, it's super interesting, and it also shows the power of the concept. Maybe as a last aspect, which I really like to mention here, we had conversations on this solution, which Interdobs and powerdobs are presenting in a few minutes, I think 4 weeks back, right? And we first talked about their way of getting change data out of SAP, and we basically had the idea, hey, can you maybe integrate that with open mirroring? And it took them literally a week or 10 days to get this integration done. And that really shows First of all, the openness of the platform, and it also shows how creativity on the SAP and expertise on the SAP side and some experience on the Microsoft side combined can really provide and create new solutions, intelligent, flexible solutions very, very quickly. And with that, enough from my side, and I'll hand over back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ulrich. Yeah, so let's learn a little more about Interdobs and powerdobs before we dive into the solution. Obviously, what you just said as a final statement, that within 10 days, you, Interdobs, powerdobs, were able to make this happen is pretty impressive, I would say. But before we go there, let's learn a little more about your companies.
Yeah, sure. So basically two companies at the table at the moment. So we have Interdobs side, and Interdobs is basically focusing on everything which has to do with BI and analytics and data, of course. And we have been doing that for 20 years. So we started 20 years ago with implementing BW systems, and later on, of course, HANA was introduced. And that was basically what we did. A couple of years ago, we started with a lot of Datasphere projects. So we were very fortunate to do the first one in Europe, which we're very proud of. And that was almost 5 years ago, I believe. So the product has actually been on the market for 5 years, which is for me still astounding because it feels like yesterday. So that was the SAP side of the table, and powerdobs basically originated a couple of years ago, and was because we saw that a lot of companies were doing hybrid landscapes. So not only having SAP as a data platform, but also other, especially Azure and Microsoft. So we decided to also extend our reach and also do that side of the table. And the powerdobs company basically does everything which has to do with Azure. So data platform, data lakes, Power BI, you name it. And the sweet spot between the companies is, of course, the integration part. So we know SAP very, very well, and we know Microsoft very well. So there's a very happy marriage between the two. So we focus on the integration between the stacks and also make sure that they run smoothly for companies.
Oh, fantastic. Cool. So and now when these two experts come together, basically, what can you do with it? Can you show us a little more?
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure we can.
Yeah. So last part of slides, I promise. A little bit of background from our side on why we actually started working on this. I guess most of the SAP customers are familiar with this subnote. This subnote basically prohibits everyone using SAP to extract change delta capture enabled CDS views from S/4HANA straight into a third-party data platform. Everything that you want to extract from your S/4HANA system has to go through Datasphere, and then premium outbound integration is the proposed solution by SAP. And what it does, Datasphere, I'll explain a bit more about what Datasphere is, but what this premium outbound integration does is it extracts the data, and Datasphere acts as a tunnel basically, and it pushes the data towards your third-party platform in Parquet file. Mm-hmm. We have a bit of a different solution because this is a push mechanism where we more of build a pull mechanism basically. But first a little bit on Datasphere, because I can imagine not all Microsoft listeners are familiar with the product. Datasphere is a data warehouse in the cloud. It's now part of Business Data Cloud, as SAP calls it. It's the main component in that new strategy, even though the product has been around for 5 years. And what it does is it provides a full-blown data warehouse in the cloud with a graphical interface. There's a way to graphically transform your data. You can do it with SQL. You can use Python. You can do whatever you want in this in this product basically. Mm-hmm. And we are using this product. So we're using Datasphere in this case. To get the data out of S4. And push that through open mirroring to the Azure side. Mm-hmm. There's one object that we used to look at before we actually started with this solution, and that's called the delta table. So within Datasphere, you have a possibility to mark a certain table as delta enabled, and in that case, that table stores basically the delta information. So it will tell you this record was already there and was updated, or this record was deleted, etc., etc. Quickly, it was also announced that it was not the idea of SAP that we should actually use this table outside of Datasphere. So we cannot extract data straight from that table, because that would be the easiest solution, right? Because all the information is there, but like it said, it's not allowed to use that specific component to get data out of Datasphere. So what we have built, it looks complicated. It is a bit complicated. Well, at least the complicated part here is that we need a lot of objects to get it working. So what we do is here on the left side, we have a source system, S/4HANA. We have a replication flow, which all of these components Martijn will show later. And the replication flow is basically the tunnel between S4 and Datasphere. So what it does, it extracts the data and loads that into Datasphere. Then we have a few objects that we are using to determine if something is a delta, if it's a new record, or I think what's the most important thing in this case, what are the deletions that are coming from the source? Because that's something you need to capture, and that's one of the hardest things to capture if you're loading data from one place to another. Like I said, we're going to show you how it looks in Datasphere. So for the people that never have seen Microsoft or never have seen Datasphere, it will be a short introduction on how Datasphere looks and how it feels and what it can do. Then Ernst will show us how the open mirroring side of things works, and then it will get back to me because, like I said, we need a lot of objects for that. So we have also found a way to automatically generate those objects. And with that, I want to hand over to Martijn. Show Datasphere.
Maybe just one quick remark. So the reason why we're basically doing this is so there is also a route with premium outbound integration, of course, only that comes at a price. And that price is quite steep. So it's a very good mechanism. We believe in it as well, but we see that many of our smaller customers don't have that massive amount of money basically to cater for that solution. So what we're actually doing is we're still abiding by the SAP rules by using Datasphere as the vehicle between SAP and Azure. We're just not using premium outbound integration, but we're using this push mechanism, what Tim is referring to, and that or pull mechanism actually. So that's basically the difference. And so there's still a possibility to use it, but it has some caveats, being price, and also the technique is not completely perfect. So and with that,
maybe one quick question from my side, or two quick questions. First of all, it looks like your solution basically supports all sources which Datasphere supports, right? Is that true? So whatever, I mean, all kinds of SAP releases which you can replicate, whether that's an old ECC, whether that's a new S/4HANA. What about the SAP cloud solutions, for example? Can you also do that with SuccessFactors, for example?
Yep.
You can. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool, because that's one of the aspects, with many other vendors, they specialize on certain releases or maybe just the ABAP-based part. By using Datasphere, you basically open up your solution to everything which SAP can connect to, right? And of course, if SAP can't connect to an SAP source, that would be a big miss. So that's I think a great thing about that solution. The other thing I wanted to ask, we did not look into the architecture in detail, but we also have a lot of customers who have hybrid scenarios, right? Where some parts of the reporting happens on the Datasphere side and some parts happens outside of the SAP ecosystem on the Microsoft side. Is this solution also something where you can combine things? So basically that, the data which you replicate into Datasphere can be leveraged inside Datasphere, and you can think of the solution which you just showed now as a kind of an add-on, which, think of it like an open hub version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever you want to call it, to kind of push data to the outside.
That's exactly what it is, I think. So that's exactly the use case. So you could actually use that, and so that's what we believe also, which is the sweet spot, is that we're actually using SAP technology, just like you said, So we're still using replication flows, which are basically the replication flows in Datasphere. So it's not premium outbound. So we use all the components, let's say, which are best suited for this solution. And that's absolutely right.
Nice, because that opens up a lot of possibilities, I think, especially for those customers, as I said, who have a hybrid landscape, don't want to replicate the data twice from the source, but basically can use then Datasphere as the hub, so to speak, and then expose the data from Datasphere to Fabric. Sounds like a very nice story, which everybody likes. We like, you like, customers like, SAP might also like it. So
I just have to claim the Open Hub 2.0 website now, because that's actually a perfect name, Ulrich.
Well, I already have claimed it.
Thank you.
Okay, I will share my screen and show you a little bit of Datasphere. So welcome to Datasphere. This is we created a specific space for this use case, which is called Interdobs mirroring, and all the objects you see are related to this use case. So as Tim already mentioned, quite a lot of objects. It's 11 in this case. We looked at a few different scenarios. So in some cases, you might only need 9 objects or 7 objects. But if you want to be most flexible, for example, if you want to have your deletions for a couple of days in your system, so you want to, if there's an error or whatever, and you have to look back a couple of days, you will still be able to pick up your deletions. So if you want to be as flexible as possible, you might need a few other objects. So as you can see, there are different types of objects. So we have a view. In the view, we basically have the logic in place to determine the deletions and the insert and the upserts. We have a task chain to load all the objects, to load it into the different local tables in Datasphere. We have the replication flow, which Tim already mentioned, to get the data out of the S/4HANA system into Datasphere. Different types of local tables to either have, like Ulrich already mentioned, to have all the data in Datasphere and to create your model on it. And for example, the deletions, which we also save in a local table. And we have a few data flows to get your data from one table or one view to another table. And I want to show a couple of those objects. We start with a replication flow. So on the left side, we see the source system. In this case, it's our demo HANA system with a source object. And this source object has 36 columns. And on the right side, you see the target object in Datasphere, which has 38 columns. And for the quick calculators among us, there's a difference between, there's two extra columns. And in the middle, you see the projection. In this projection, you can either create your mappings between the source and the object, and you have the possibility to create a sort of function or constant. So what we did, the 2 extra columns are named change type and change timestamp. And obviously we don't have them in the source system, but we added it to the target object, and we are filling it with the letter U for update or upsert for the for the new and the modified records, and we're filling it with the current timestamp. So with this, we are able to check whether what data came in, for example, for the last day or for the last couple of days. This object can also, you can also add another table, more tables. So you can basically reuse this object for more tables if needed. And if you look at the monitor of this object, is we already loaded the data, so it's 710,000 records as an initial load. It took about 1 minute, so that's not so long. And what it's doing right now, it's actively trying to get the delta, basically. So if there are new records coming in, it will load those records. So what else I can show you? Well, it will show you that the initial is complete and it's transferring the delta potential delta load right now. And it's loading into a local table. So this is the local table we created, and you will see the extra columns again. So the change type and the change timestamp. And what you will see if you do a data preview, it will show you the 710,000 records. And in the end, it will show you the added columns, the change type and the change timestamp, yeah, with the according letter U and the according timestamp. The last thing I want to show you from Datasphere side is the logic for providing Ernst with the table with the either initial load or the delta load or the deletions, whatever it is at that point in time. For this demo, we only have an initial, but we also try to check if deletions or updates are coming in. So the first part is the new and modified records. We basically select all the data from the local table I just showed, and we're checking it with a specific view. And in this view, we're determining if it's an initial load or it's an upsert or it's an insert. And with this field coming out of that view, Ernst is able to distinguish between, if it's an upsert, insert, or initial or deletion. And we're unioning it, it's always a difficult word, with the deleted records. So we're basically showing or loading the primary key of this the table. We're filling all the other fields with a dummy value because it's not relevant anymore. And we're extracting it from the other local table, which are holding the deletions. So that's basically it from Datasphere side. Any questions for this part?
No, sounds reasonable.
Okay, sounds good. We'll give the floor to Ernst then.
Yeah, okay. We will switch over to the Fabric side then. We will go to the browser. And there I created a workspace specifically for this demo. And the basics, all we need is basically a mirror database and a notebook. And the mirror database I already created, but you can easily create it using the new item and then search for mirror. And you get all the different types of mirroring. And the open mirroring is this one, mirror database preview. If you click on it, you give it a name, and it will create this object with all the sub-objects. If you click on that, you will see there is it is running, and there is nothing to show yet because we loaded nothing to the landing zone. This is the URL of the landing zone, and this is the location where we need to put the Parquet files, which will be automatically mirrored by the logic of Microsoft to the lakehouse, which is created and which you can see the SQL endpoint. This is the SQL endpoint. Because I tested this earlier, we have some schemas we used already, but you see the tables are empty now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the open mirroring side. For the notebook, we will use a separate environment. So if you go to the notebook, there are just a few steps you need to do if you have the notebook, and that's creating an environment for Spark where you load the jar, the JDBC driver for SAP. And sorry about that. So And if you have created that environment and loaded the jar file for the SAP driver, you can connect your notebook to that environment. And then the only thing you need to do is setting up the connection properties to the Datasphere environment where the magic of the Interdobs developers runs. And if you have done that, you can run the notebook.
Maybe to
just do run all.
Jump in, Ernst, sorry. The driver you're talking about is the HANA ODBC driver, right? Or
Right.
JDBC, sorry, in this case, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can download it from this URL.
Hmm.
So I started running the notebook. It will read the configuration. There are a few generic functions I use. And then it will write, it will pull the data from the Datasphere and write it to the landing zone. Actually, the row marker column, which is added in the Datasphere logic, that's important because the open mirroring logic will use that to determine whether it's an insert, update, or delete. But that's all prepared by the Datasphere logic. So I just need to read the table and store it. So if you see here is the main function, it will load all the tables we want to load from Datasphere. In this case, it's just one. And it will read the data using the JDBC driver into a data frame. It will show some debug information, and it will write to the landing zone. So this is the example. You just see it's 710,000 rows and 36 columns, including the special row marker, which is at the end. In this case, it's initial load, so it's all insert. And then it will write to the landing zone of the mirror database landing zone. And no, it's finished already. Let's take a look at the mirror database. It's running. We check with a refresh. You see it already loaded 710,000 rows. And if we want, we can show it in the SQL endpoint. And now you see we already have table in it. If I click on it, it will load an example. And you will see the same columns.
Okay, but cool. So on the Datasphere side, you prepare basically the data, you have everything ready to fetch, and then on the Fabric side, with the open mirroring, you just run the notebook, which then retrieves the information or pulls the information from Datasphere, and then obviously the standard processes that are available on the Fabric side are in place, and that's how we can see now the table in Fabric.
Yeah, that's right. And the technical column, the row marker column, is of course not visible in the end table because it's not a user data.
Yeah, and then there's one more specific component to the solution, and that's like I said, we have all these we need all those objects basically, and it's important to understand that on the Datasphere side, those objects are created in a so-called season file, which looks like JSON. And what we are able to do is we are extracting the data from the database from Datasphere, and we're dynamically building up all the objects and views that we need. And we'll not go over every row in this Python code, but basically when I press the play button, it will start downloading information, as you can see, about the table where the data is stored in. It will automatically determine keys. It will automatically determine what SQL do we need. How does the data flows, the task change, basically everything that is in there will now automatically be generated and pushed towards Datasphere.
Maybe to understand that, so you're basically saying all the artifacts which you showed on that big diagram first, you're able to generate using your Python code. What do you actually have to configure on the Datasphere side upfront? You probably have to create the connection to the source system manually, I would assume. Do you also have to create the virtual tables for the source objects, or how do you do that?
Yeah, you have to. You have to once set up the replication flow, basically, and the rest can all be generated. So once we know what table comes in, we can generate everything that's sitting on top of that table.
So the replication flow from the source into Fabric needs to be set up manually.
We could actually set that up automatically as well, but it's more complicated because the season file contains then all kinds of XY coordinates where the UI is actually looking at. So that makes it a bit difficult, but it is possible.
But that's
takes 2 days probably.
Yeah, this replication flow is the one which also contains the additional 2 columns, right?
Yeah.
The projection which Martijn showed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically something which customers or you would have to do manually to set this up. Okay.
Yeah, and like Martijn said, you can do multiple tables in one replication flow. So it's a setup of a few minutes, not
Yeah, it's basically setting up the raw layer in Datasphere. That's the only step you need to do.
And of course, I mean, if you're having such a hybrid landscape, that's what you would need to do anyway, right? You need to set that up for your SAP specific reporting, and then if you want to move the data out, you basically can add this additional piece by automation.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good start. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and like you can see here, it's now generating version 7 of all those objects. So. Yeah, well, let's not wait until it's done because it will take some time, obviously. But yeah, it takes a lot of time out of our hands, basically. So yeah.
And of course, I mean, it removes a lot of potential errors, right? If you don't have to do that manually, but can automate it. So there's a lot of benefits in automating all of that.
Yeah.
Not just speed in terms of like go to market or accelerating the solution, but also consistency and robustness, right? Again.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Well, cool.
I have a few questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, you showed the monitor for the replication from the SAP source into Datasphere, and I think we saw that you replicated like 700,000 records in about a minute or so, which is nice performance. I think it's around like 42 million rows an hour, but that's just as book, right? So did you do like performance tests on larger tables, like let's say AC.A or the CDS views for sales orders? They have like hundreds of columns. That I would be interested in. Secondly, sizing of the Datasphere tenant. I mean, you're moving the data into the Datasphere tenant, right? That's a potential source of cost as well. Do you have some experience on that for such scenarios? That's number 2. And of course, so performance latencies to which you can get, those aspects I would be curious to learn about.
Yeah, I think actually number 1 Martijn can answer, I think, because he's done some tests with some large objects. Right?
Oh yeah, of course. We've tried it with bigger tables. I think with 14 million records and with more than 100 million records. So what we saw is that it's with the smallest Datasphere tenant, you will still be able to load those type of tables. So I think it only took about, well, I'm not sure about the initial load, but definitely the delta load will only take a couple of minutes. I think the initial load might take an hour or so. I'm not sure, but you will not do it every day. So,
No.
but the delta load, so all the logic to determine the deletions and all those type of things, it will only take a couple of minutes. So even with those kind of tables, it's a nice solution.
So you could think of latencies maybe in the range of 5 minutes end to end. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Right,
yeah,
in the right ballpark. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. I mean,
yeah.
Of course, you always have people talking about real time or near real time, but in the end, a lot of people are happy with an hour or maybe a day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if you look cost-wise on this Datasphere tenant, is exactly what Martijn mentioned, is that you don't need the biggest one to be able to do this, because actually what you need is some amount of RAM. That's important. Storage is fairly cheap in Datasphere. So actually when it's using the file storage instead of the memory. So if you use the smallest instance, then you can already store a lot of data, let's say, before, as a landing platform for sending it off to Azure if you want to. So exactly we tested with, I think even with a trial tenant, which has 32 gigs of memory, which I would not do. I would extend that a bit, but still it's relatively cheap.
Okay, so also an interesting point. You're not loading the data into HANA memory, but you're loading it into the what's it called, NSE, right? Native storage extension. So.
Yeah, so the storage part basically of Datasphere, and of course the effort which is taken, the calculation of the deltas, where everything which is loaded into RAM. So basically, when the views are executed and that sort of thing, that takes that consumes the amount of resources. So that should be at a certain level. But as long as you don't run everything in parallel, you should be fairly safe. So, but sizing, of course, is always something you need to look at. But it's running on a fairly small instance, so that's pretty impressive.
It's a good thing. I mean, it always depends on how you use it. Again, going back to my favorite hybrid scenarios, right? The more hybrid you are, the more resources you need on the Datasphere side anyway. But still, if you know how much resources you consume in addition, that's of course important, because I mean these additional resources will have impact on your Datasphere processing as well. Maybe one more question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if there's one sort of interesting fact with premium outbound integration is once the replication flow actually fails into the target system, you basically have to do the re-init. So you have to pay again your Agdoka table consumption. And that will not be the case, of course, if you first have it land in Datasphere. So actually you also have that sort of savior. Yeah. So that's an extra plus on this solution.
Maybe write up all these points somewhere on your website.
You could.
It's a recommendation from my side.
Thank you very much. I will do so.
Always happy to help. Last question: did you ever think about, or would it be possible to also use HANA data lake files for that? I mean, that would be basically the next level of price. The lowest level of price, right, when it comes to doing such things. Honestly, I've never had a hands-on experience with a tenant that had HANA data lake files, but it sounds like a natural thing to think about. I don't know.
Yeah, we switch it on in our demo tenant, so we actually have a space which is running on HANA data lake files, but we actually haven't tested it out that much because it requires quite some setup to make it happen. So it can potentially indeed be the next step. I actually think that using HANA data lake files also come at a price, and it's also not the cheapest solution. So this you might be better off with just using the standard landing zone in SAP or in Datasphere instead of using the data lake files. But we can test it out. I mean, we have an instance which is capable of handling it. So. Give us another 4 weeks. We'll put it in.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Fab
2 weeks. Okay.
3 weeks. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much for showing this, and I think it's great to see with your expertise on the SAP side, with Datasphere, with your expertise on the Microsoft side with Fabric. It's really cool to see what you can do if you combine your knowledge and really build an end-to-end solution. So. Obviously, if there is someone who watches our episode now, we'll put links to your solution or to your companies, obviously, in the show notes, so they can reach out to you. Any other last things that you want to mention?
Yeah, thank you for having us. I mean, it has been a privilege. So it's great to be on a podcast which handles both sides of the tables, because that's very unique. So we can talk about SAP and Microsoft in a single podcast. So very happy to do so.
No, my pleasure. Again, thank you so much for joining, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Let's do so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.